Emotionally regulated adults aren't reactive, because you can tell me something that I don't agree with, and I can have a strong response internally. And I can say, you know what? Let me fall back, because that's not going to work for me. But when somebody is very reactive to you, that is a big red flag. This person is not emotionally regulated. We just met. If we are on date number 3 and maybe I share my political opinion on an election and you become very explosive about my opinion, leave. That is a red flag. If somebody's clingy on date number 2 and that's not what you like, it's not going to get better. There is toxic possessiveness where for that person, they feel they have to own you. Everybody wants to escape reality. I get it. But seeking that constantly through validation through men, validation through women, pimping, doing whatever, at the end of the day, you're still going to be left with yourself and you're going to be empty. You can't outrun your thoughts. And so really, you got to face the lion on your path. Because sometimes desperation and the need for companionship, which is understandable, will have you making really negative life decisions that you're going to hate yourself for in a year. Hi, everybody. My name is Marie, and I'm one of the producers here at 8 at the Table, and I am also a former marriage and family therapist. Today, I want to touch base on attachment styles and how they impact you in your romantic relationships and how they impact you in other relationships with your friends and family. So in the 1950s and 60s, a British psychologist by the name of John Bowlby developed a framework for attachment. And so he, in his observation, just recognized that children with their parent and their caregiver, they tend to attach different. So even though since then this framework has been added upon for today, I'm just going to talk about John Bowlby's 4 attachment styles. So there are 4, right? So the first one is secure attachment. That is the primary goal of the caregiver-child relationship. So when you have a secure attachment, essentially what happens is the child develops a reassurance from their caregiver. So they know that they can cry and the caregiver is going to come comfort them. They know that if there's a food need, the caregiver is going to give it. They know that if even if they tantrum, the caregiver is always going to be emotionally available for them. Not only that the caregiver is emotionally available, the caregiver also encourages the child to explore the world. So the caregiver is there and saying, go out and explore the world. I'll always be here. I'll always be your support. I'll always be the one constant thing in your life. So you develop this ideology that the world is not against me. I can go out and I can trust people in the world. I don't have to be paranoid that someone is going to harm me, because the primary caregiver sets the tone in how we see the world as we grow older. So that's like the secure attachment, right? Okay, so we'll put that as the ideal. Now, the next 3 are considered unsecure attachment. So anxious attachment style. This one is different because the caregiver is not consistent. So one time the caregiver might be comforting, might be loving, might be nurturing, like a secure attachment. And then another time the caregiver is not available. The caregiver might even be dismissive. The caregiver may shut the child out. So now the child develops this idea that the world is not really reliable. It creates anxiety within that child because it never really knows what it's going to get. The third one is avoidant. This one is really tricky because in avoidant attachment, the caregiver provides survival needs for that child. So shelter and food. However, comfort, loving, nurturing, caring, the caregiver just does not provide that. And is very dismissive around that. You'll often see toughen up. The world is harsh. nobody cry. You don't cry. And those types of caregivers, for them, their responsibility ends with providing your survival needs, which is food and shelter. And so when that occurs, the child learns to, one, mature very quickly. The child learns not to depend emotionally on others. The child learns to really hold in any emotion because that is almost like a sign of weakness. So that creates what you would call somebody who is emotionally unavailable. The fourth, and to me, honestly, the most lethal, is disorganized. And it's called disorganized because you will see traces of the other two insecure attachment styles. So with disorganized type, there's usually some neglect and abuse happening. So the child essentially learns that, okay, yeah, the parent, the caregiver, sometimes may be kind, sometimes may be nurturing. However, in other times, the parent may be neglectful. The parent may not feed the child. The parent may abuse the child. And so a lot of trauma comes from there. And that creates, it's disorganized because the child may be anxious. The child may be fearful. The child will long for the attachment of the parent, but is so afraid to try to reach out. So it creates this kind of disorganized and anxiety within the child. It doesn't know what to do. The child is just very kind of stuck in the middle of the ocean by itself, because not only are you missing like food and shelter, you're missing reassurance, you're missing love. And so you get sprinkles of it sometime, but human beings are not meant to experience these intense moments of fear. Like fearing your caregiver is probably one of the most traumatic things that can occur. So how do these things show up in our relationships? All right, well, let's talk about people with secure attachments. So when you have like a secure attachment, you're able to develop healthy relationships. You're able to have relationships where you trust your partner. That doesn't mean that your partner is not going to lie to you. That doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen to you. However, when those things happen to you, it's how you react to them. So when you develop these secure attachment styles, you are able to regulate yourself. You don't have this overly intense feeling to possess your partner. You don't have this overly feeling that your partner is out to get you. So that's why when people have secure attachments, they are able to develop healthy, loving relationships. And studies have shown people who, grow up with secure attachment style tend to have long lasting relationships. Now, people with anxious styles, this is how it manifests often in your relationship. You have a fear of abandonment, and you have this fear because your parenting style was a little bit inconsistent. You never knew what you were going to get from your caregiver, right? So it kind of puts you on edge. You have a need to be approved by your partner. You have a need to possess your partner. You have a need that you always fear like, am I going to be left behind? Is he cheating on me? Why is he talking to that girl? Why is he laughing at her? Are they talking about how they're going to like play me? So you have this paranoia because it's like this thing is instilled in you where like you almost have to dance and please your partner all the time to make sure that they're satisfied. So you're in a constant state of anxiety, essentially. So people with avoidant, they're a little tricky too because they are often emotionally distant and they act like they don't need you. Really, they want to be vulnerable so bad. Really, they do. They want to be vulnerable. They want someone. And sometimes like that breakthrough is difficult for that partner. Sometimes you'll have a partner that'll like thug it out and be like, I know that you need this emotional connection. But a lot of people just give up because they're like, you're not emotionally available. Every time I try to get close to you, you push me away. And the person is doing that because it's a form of self-preservation because that's what they know. So even in their core, they do want that emotional connection. Because of that attachment style, they're just like, they have to preserve themselves. They have to be emotionally distanced. They appear cold. They appear like they don't need you. I don't need anybody. So that often happens. With disorganized, it's all over the place. And it would be because of trauma. Because if you are severely neglected as an infant with your caregiver, you're going to be all over the place. You are going to be emotionally erratic. You're going to have highs and lows where there's moments where you are experiencing this intense love. And then there's this moment where I hate this person. So it's going to be completely disorganized because for you, it's almost like a trauma response with, people with attachments that are disorganized. So they are really all over the place. So the reason why we're telling you this, by the way, and this is not to say, like I said, this framework, a lot have been added since like the 60s, obviously, but it's a good starting point. It really is. Like if you find yourself in a place where you're like, and you're really in that place, like maybe I'm the problem, right? Maybe you should kind of like take a look at your attachment style. And it could be a little difficult because if you're like, whoa, I have really disorganized attachment style. What does that mean? Were my caregiver neglectful? I mean, you could be unpacking a lot, but it's a good place to start to kind of really talk to yourself about what should you do next. And it could look different for a lot of people. I always recommend therapy, but therapy isn't always about talk therapy. And I think that's a misconception that people think, like when I say, oh, maybe you should thinking about, therapy. It doesn't have to be talk therapy. So it's just a framework for you to start, reflect, and to see where you go from there. No, I said 4, but 3 are like insecure attachment style. Only 1 is secure. The 4 attachment styles are secure attachment style, anxious attachment style, avoidant attachment style, and disorganized attachment style. And this is based on John Bowlby's, who really developed the framework. And like I said, since then, many psychologists and psychoanalysts have really contributed a lot in terms of a lot of different attachment styles have been added to it. But these are the 4 core that kind of founded this kind of a theory. So when we're talking about, people being promiscuous, there are a lot of variables, right, that could contribute to that, obviously. And of course, attachment can contribute to that. If you have an anxious attachment style or a disorganized attachment style, you are constantly seeking value, to be valued by someone. You need that. And so what happens is, and I've encountered people that say, I didn't realize that I was seeking validation from men because like I really needed it. It was almost like this boost that I would get when I would have a man pay attention to me. We have sex. And then after the sex, that boost just drops. So can it be a contributing factor? Of course. Like if you need validation consistently, you're going to seek it any way you can get it. But it doesn't mean that that's the only variable. So when we're talking about like, why do people need so much attention from other people? You have a good partner at home. You have a partner that gives you a moderate amount of attention. You know what I mean? Life is lifing. But for you, it's not enough, right? And there could be a lot of different reasons as to why that happens. There's not a singular answer to that. But I think, one, people feel empty. Like I really do. I feel like a lot of people feel empty. And what you're getting at home is not enough. And it's like they're getting temporary fixes from like the attention that they're getting. And it's enough to hold you over, but it's not enough to sustain you. And I think that's part of why that's happening. I feel people feel empty. Like, could it be attachment styles? Of course it could be attachment styles. But what the people don't realize, it's not your partner. And it's not even the people that's giving you temporary attention. It's you. Like you have to be the one to fill yourself. And I'm not saying it in a way where I'm trying to be motivational. I'm really not. It's just something that you realize, especially as you get older, you realize that seeking what you need to fill you from the outside will always leave you void. It's like a drug. It's just like somebody who's addicted to crack. It's like, cool, you got a hit. And you good, but you're gonna need the other hit. That euphoric feeling, because that's really what it is. It's a euphoric feeling. And who doesn't like to feel good? Like if somebody was on drugs, they would be on drug 24/7. When they get down, it's the worst down ever because you cannot escape yourself. And that's the thing that people don't understand. Like we numb ourselves with like whatever your vice is. And I'm not knocking anybody. I'm really not. Like, whether it's drinking, whether it's gaming, whether it's whoring, whether it's whatever, you will find a way to numb yourself because you need that break. Everybody wants to escape reality. I get it. But seeking that constantly through validation through men, validation through women, pimping, doing whatever, at the end of the day, you're still going to be left with yourself and you're going to be empty. You can't outrun your thoughts. And so really, you got to face the lion on your path. Whenever, if it's a man or a woman and you're dating and you're like, boom, I got to step up my game and start spending this bread because you think, and you might be right, that's what she wants, that's what she needs. Or you're a woman and you're like, I really like him, I can't make him hold out too long. Let me give it up real quick because he's going to get bored. He might. He might. And so, yeah, that's really anxiety. That's a anxious form of going out about the world, because for you would rather compromise what you really want so that you can keep a person. Because if you really wanted to spend the money, you wouldn't be like, damn, I gotta start spending that bread. You wouldn't approach it that way. If you really, really wanted to sleep with homie, you wouldn't be like, oh my God, I gotta give it to him because, he gonna get bored. Then no, you're compromising what you really want so that you can keep what you think you want. And it probably isn't. And that's why when people truly stand on principle, they end up winning. And I know people don't like to hear that, but really when you get to a stage in your life, like we've all been young, we've all compromised principles, we've all been there. But when you get to the stage where you stand on principle and you're like, no, I really like this person and I will spend money that next month I can't pay rent because I'm trying to keep up with her, or I'm going to have sex with him because, he's going to get bored. And then you feel worthless after. When you get past that, people who stand on principle end up winning, in my opinion. And again, if you're dating someone and, some red flags that might pop up, and these are just red flags, okay? Forget attachment. If you're just dating someone and they are very possessive over you, they're very clingy. We've been on 2 dates. They constantly call you, they ghost you, right? Then call you back, right? It's like, come here. No, go. Things like that. If they're very reactive to certain things that you say, for you, it's just you just make a statement, right? And it could be controversial, right? And they're very reactive. Emotionally regulated adults aren't reactive, because you can tell me something that I don't agree with, right? And I can have a strong response internally. And I can say, you know what? Let me fall back because that's not going to work for me. But when somebody is very reactive to you, that is a big red flag. This person is not emotionally regulated. We just met. If we are on date number 3 and maybe I share my political opinion on an election and you become very explosive about my opinion, leave. That is a red flag. And that's forget attachment style. These are things you should avoid because it's not going to get better. If somebody's clingy on date number 2 and that's not what you like, it's not going to get better. If someone for you is emotionally distant, right? And you can see it. If somebody's very reactive, if somebody's very possessive, and I'm going to say this because I know we romanticize possessiveness, and I get it. I really do. But there is toxic possessiveness where for that person, they feel they have to own you. And that's not cutesy jealousy. Oh, my man. That's not what that is. That is dangerous. Okay, leave. You're not emotionally vested on date number 3. I know people will be like, yes, I am. No, you're not. Okay. If you've been with someone, for 2 months and you see these flags, leave before you get locked in. Because sometimes desperation and the need for companionship, which is understandable, will have you making really negative life decisions that you're going to hate yourself for in a year. So when we're talking about influence and how much influence should your partner have, like in terms of, you could have your parents, you could have your siblings. Like when you say like influence, when you say things like your parents and your siblings, right? The thing about those people, they are vested in your best interests and not because the outcome benefits them. And that's what makes it different, right? When someone is vested in your interests, not because the outcome directly impacts me, that makes a difference. So if you have a partner and they're like, they want to have a lot of influence on you. Well, why? Why do you want to have that influence? Because I care about your well-being. I want you to be safe. Not because you know how crazy that makes me look? You know what happens to me when you do that? You making me look stupid. Well, then really, you're not really concerned about me. You're concerned really about how it's impacting you. And that's a big thing that people don't understand. Like if you really, really care about someone, right? And you take yourself out the equation, then you start to kind of be a little bit more objective. And it's difficult to do because emotions are involved. But when someone wants to control, and come on now, we could use a little common sense. When someone wants to control every aspect of your life, this is not because they're concerned about you. When somebody wants to go everywhere you go, you're going to brunch with the girls, I'm coming. What? It's spa day with the girls, I'm coming. What? Because I care about your well-being. No, you don't care about my well-being. It's more about the other person. And I think that's where we make the distinction of when somebody is really interested in your well-being and when they're concerned about how something is going to impact them. And so they want to influence the outcome so they don't have any inconvenience to their life. You see what I'm saying? I think that today we are in dating, like people who are dating, I think that they're overstimulated. They're like, there's so much stimuli out there. You have social media, it's so much that it's like sensory and emotional overload. And so I think that's impacting how people date. And now, there's a lot of variables besides that, but I think depending on where people are at their life, right? Because there's so much stimuli and there's so much access and there's an illusion of choice. Because of this illusion of choice, you think there's always somebody around the corner. And so you dismiss, someone for really sometimes I've heard things from, oh my God, he's got a droid. I can't. And it's like, okay. Because in your mind, there's always somebody around the corner. And it's really an illusion because don't ever mistake quality over quantity. Yeah, there is somebody around the corner. Doesn't mean it's a quality person. You will leave a quality person over something trivial and think the line is out there. And yeah, you will meet a lot of low quality people. And because of all of this, like, social media, TV, going in bars, doing this, Hinge, dating, there's so much access to people. That's the problem. Before, you didn't have that much access to people, right? You have so much access to people. If you're interested in a dude and you get just his first name, your homegirl is better than the FBI. She will tell you everything about homie before you even speak to him. No, what used to happen before? You're kind of interested in this guy. You have to get to know him, right? Because things are different on paper than they are in person. They're not the same. And so we are so busy meeting people like on paper, we're not meeting them in person. And so we're dismissing them because, again, you have so many options, which you don't. You really don't. So I think that's probably what's impacting the way we're very dismissive because we just think like, oh, it's always somebody else. It's always somebody else. I could go on TikTok. I could go on Instagram. I could go on Hinge. I could go to the bar. I could yeah, I'm going to order DoorDash. The girl that delivered the food, she hot. Like, people are overstimulated. This is my opinion. Again, thank you for joining us. This is just a little quick tidbit about attachment styles. Again, I'm Marie, one of the producers at 8 at the Table. And again, former marriage and family therapist, always here to bring you some good info on love and marriage, relationships, love and all.